All right, we are on top of major breaking news in the tech world. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, has reached a settlement in a huge lawsuit filed by more than 24 states. The states accuse the company of misleading customers about the safety of its products, intentionally getting children addicted to them, and improperly collecting their data. We are still reading through the court documents, but it looks like the penalty could max out at more than $16 billion. The trial was in its second week in California. If the company lost, Meta could have faced hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in damages. Joining me now, Neil Irwin, chief economic correspondent at Axios, and Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. I'm so glad he's here, senior associate dean for leadership studies at Yale School of Management. Jeffrey, I get that on its face, people are going to be like, wow, it could be $16 billion. $16 billion is not much. We thought it was going to be hundreds of billions. What do you think?
It's unbelievable. This was, a $1.4 trillion lawsuit that here you have 29 states, red states and blue states combined, and it's being tried in Oakland, California by a very good attorney general who somehow they've dropped the ball on this because this was a home court advantage for Rob Bonta, the attorney general, a Democrat, and of course, California, a blue state. This is a very favorable setting. And everybody was anticipating this is going to be tens of billions of dollars, not this mere 16 billion. It is a mere 16. That's 2 weeks of revenues for just 2 weeks of revenues. That's what people
need to understand. Like, because someone's going 16 billion, that's peanuts for Meta.
It's 2 weeks revenue.
And it sets an excellent precedent for them. Like, we thought this lawsuit was just the first and there were going to be so many behind it.
Oh, the victim stories were devastating. We had Frances Hagen, who was in my class various times, the whistleblower inside, of course, of Meta, had pointed out just the way they were trafficking in minors' data, that they intentionally were using Instagram to bait them young, and the record was so devastating that, as Zuckerberg said this, he said, settle. I don't want this to go to trial. And they settled so low. They could have gotten so much better a deal out of them. And the cautionary tale for other social media is, hey, who cares? We can go right ahead. I mean, this was a law. This was an old law. It was a law from 2000. It wasn't one of these newer ones. It was John McCain's law, and Frank Lautenbach's law, and a Nevada Democrat who's now is no longer senator anymore, named Brian. Is that these three sponsored a very strong law, bipartisan law, and the violations, I'm no attorney, but they seem pretty egregious in terms of entrapping kids, enticing them, entrapping them, and trading in their data without their knowledge, underage kids. And the victim stories were so devastating that this was going to be a very difficult case for all of social media companies. And now what's happening? You look at the markets right now as we're speaking, Stephanie. Meta stock is up 6%.
He took the words right out of my mouth, Neil. Meta stock is going to soar today. This is going to cost them nothing.
Yeah, look, there are some agreements they made in this agreement, apparently, where 2-hour cap on teenagers being able to use Instagram, limit on overnight. So there's some stuff in here that implies changing the way the company works and the way the products work going forward. But you're right. We have this broad crisis of mental illness, depression, general kind of malaise and unhappiness, especially among younger people. And I think you can really draw a direct line from the social media that so many have consumed so much of the time and this broader kind of crisis of mental health. The idea that $17 billion and some limitations change that, it's not at all clear to me.
So my message to Rob Bonta, I know we just had you on to talk about Paramount. If you'd like to come back on to talk about this, I got a lot of questions for you. All right, in other businesses.
And he's a Yale alum, too, and we like him. What's going on?
Yale alum. Okay, let's talk about other businesses. Canada is now punching back against President Trump's trade war, unleashing new retaliatory tariffs on hundreds of U.S. products, from aluminum to lobster. The tariffs are ranging from 15 to 50%. Like, do you hear how exasperated I sound? Because this is so ridiculous and pointless. You and I both know Mark Carney very well. This is crazy that this is even happening. So unnecessary. It's going to hurt both of our countries.
Mark Carney is classy. Mark Carney is really dignified. And Mark Carney is probably going to become the most popular prime minister in Canada's history. Lester Pearson, before you were born, but when I was a child, was considered the most unifying prime minister of Canada. And Brian Mulroney, second to him, who created the free trade agreements, However, a third might have been Pierre Trudeau, the father. But now we have seen that Mark Carney has every part of Canada across political parties so unified. And a lot of this is the histrionics. You know, people have said that, like Macron, President Macron has said, nobody has unified Europe as much as President Trump has in a negative reaction than since Charlemagne. And it's a similar thing here, is that people who have major differences, political, cultural, ethnic and things, have all unified in Canada against the U.S. But in terms of the dollar issues, it's just so strange. President Trump is saying, who's the idiot president that brought about this horrible, unfair deal? This is his deal.
Correct.
This is USMCA in 2020.
Maybe the best thing Jared Kushner did in Trump's first term was USMCA. Neil, what is your take here? Because economically, it makes no sense. But politically, if I'm Mike Rogers in Michigan, if I'm Susan Collins in Maine, right now, I'm saying, are you kidding me?
Yeah, look, we've seen this over and over. The president does not seem very focused on helping Republicans win these tight congressional races and Senate races. And this is the latest example. Look, there are two asymmetries here, and the president seems to be focused on the economic asymmetry. The U.S. economy is 10 times bigger than the Canadian economy. Therefore, they need us more than we need them. But he's forgetting the political asymmetry, which is he's not very popular right now. Mark Carney is very popular in Canada, and the Canadian people are united. Doug Ford, the provincial leader, conservative. This is a bipartisan thing in Canada of being really outraged at U.S. behavior. And you're seeing that in just the resolve of the Canadian people to deal with the pain of these higher tariffs in exchange for, really standing up for themselves and their sense of nationhood.
Can I add to those excellent insights? Why now?
Excellent insights, yes.
They aren't very good.
They are.
Is that why now? It's because USMCA came up. The original terms expired. It was up for negotiation in the beginning of July. Well, the negotiations failed, but they could have just rolled over it with the same terms. Trump created this non-issue. Trump has completely manufactured this. There's no reason to go into Iran just then. There's no reason to go into Venezuela. Greenland's not an issue. It's because of the other issues you talk about on this show. It's the affordability and the accountability you were talking about before the break.
Jeffrey, I cannot even figure out what Americans are saying to the president. Like I was even looking in my own social media comments after I was breaking down how this trade war, and anyone who was saying, like, we need to do this, we need to fight back against Canada, I would dig in. Every single one of them were bots. This is just Donald Trump's nonsensical vengeance that does not help any American businesses or any American voters. Neil, let me ask you quickly about inflation for a moment. Data out this morning is showing it is still an issue, higher than the Federal Reserve would like it to be. If you look at where interest rates are, despite what Scott Bessent is trying to do, the market is saying, things don't look great.
Yeah, we really seem to be settled in around 3% inflation, well above the 2% the Fed targets. And keep in mind, that's 3% inflation over and above the inflation of the last 5 years. So, when people say they're unhappy with the cost of living, with affordability, that's what they're talking about, the cumulative inflation over the last 5 years. And there's just not the credibility right now that it's coming down to 2 like the Fed wants. Kevin Warsh is speaking on Friday in Jackson Hole. I'm heading there tomorrow. We'll see what he has to say about the direction of policy going forward, whether they're going to do something more aggressive to try and bring inflation back to their target.
Neil, once again, I agree with everything you said, but what we just saw in the CPE data, is the core data, it's up 3.7%. I would round that up a lot closer to 4 than to 3. This is twice what the Fed's target is. So this is not good data. The inflation is really there. And there's some who expected maybe it'd be even worse than that, but this is a genuine concern. And the consumer good prices are going up. We know that oil is going up. And we know that Putin's behind it all, but that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole other segment that Jeffrey will be back for. Neil, travel safe. Jeff, thank you for being here. Before we go, we just got I want to read a passage from the statement that was released by AG Rob Bonta, Yale alumni, outlining some of the reforms as part of the settlement. Here we go. Today's settlement includes default daily time limits on social media and a block on overnight use that can only be lifted by a parent, enhanced parental supervision tools, robust age assurance measures to detect users under the age of 18 and children under 13 that are on the platform, and the appointment of an independent auditor to oversee compliance. That is a portion from Rob Bonta's statement. And I'm just going to reiterate, I would love to have him back on this show to discuss this and more.